Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 3rd regular meeting of Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of Council is held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Question period sign-up sheet, which is on the table by the double doors to my left. Please note the Council Procedure Bylaw has been updated and questions may be asked relating to the following agenda items only: consent items, reports, or other business. Before we start the meeting, I would like to take a few moments to remind those who are attending in person about the rules of decorum for Council and committee meetings. A meeting of Council is intended to be a place where democracy can freely take place in a respectful and safe manner. The Council chambers is a workplace, and there are considerations Council and staff must make to ensure that a safe work environment exists in accordance with WorkSafe BC regulations. To support this, disrespectful conduct will not be tolerated, so we ask that there be no cheering, jeering, or other outbursts from the gallery at any time. This will ensure that anyone speaking, whether it be a delegation, member of Council, or staff, is not interrupted and can make their point freely without distraction or fear of ridicule. In instances where a speaker is being inappropriate or has exceeded their time limit, their microphone will be cut off. Similarly, if there are outbursts by any person in the gallery, they will be asked to stop, and if they do not comply, they may be asked to leave, as permitted under Section 133 of the Community Charter. If necessary, Council may call a recess in order to reset the environment of the Council chambers. It is our belief that if everyone is respectful of these basic considerations, this meeting and future meetings will be more effective in furthering the business of the City of Nanaimo. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items, Ms. Gurry. We don't have any tonight. Motion for adoption of the agenda. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Mayor's report. I only have a couple items tonight. Firstly, just a reminder that May was invasive plant removal month, and I just want to say thank you to all of those who participated in the process. And I particularly want to single out Broombusters, who have historically done a great deal of work for the community. And participated in a serious way, making this a better community all around. Also, we're now in spring go-by-bike cycling into Nanaimo. I have announced the dates previously. We had a wonderful kickoff, somewhat dampened by inclement weather yesterday, and appreciate all of those, the city staff and volunteers who came out to support the kickoff. There's a map of celebrations can be found if you go to www.gobybikebc.ca. It's a province-led initiative, free to participate by registering, as I say, at that site. And we're giving away prizes as well to ensure that people do participate. I have nothing further. We have nothing to rise and report on, Ms. Gurry. We have no presentations tonight, no committee minutes, no consent items. We do have a delegation unrelated to agenda items, and that is Kaylin, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Libby of Happy Pad, and Jeremy Bellsmith of Nanaimo Churches, and I assume they're coming in via Zoom.
We are, Your Worship. Thank you for having us. And there's
Very
Kaylin.
Good, and welcome tonight. I will just remind you that you have 5 minutes, and when you're 4 minutes in, I'll let you know you have a minute left, and much appreciate you taking the time to participate tonight.
Thank you again for having us. I won't take long to introduce Kaylin. The churches of Nanaimo are always interested in how we can make our city a better place, and with the housing crisis we're currently facing. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Kaylin Libby to talk a little bit about Happy Pad.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kaylin Libby. I'm the CEO and founder at Happy Pad. We're a social purpose organization that's been working to help solve Canada's housing crisis over the last 7 years, working with many levels of government, including Canada Mortgage and Housing, in a very unique approach, which is utilizing extra space across Canada, what we call hidden housing supply, to help solve our housing crisis but also making our communities more inclusive and affordable, and especially helping our older adults age in place. Can we go to the next slide, please? To explain what we do, I want to introduce you to someone, Diane. Diane is a retired teacher who has lived most of her life in British Columbia, and she's a widow who lost her husband about 5 years ago from cancer. This left her living alone in her family home where she raised her children. And on a small teacher's pension, she was always a little bit short on money each month with increased costs of living, increased property taxes, and fuel costs. Diane is part of a fast-growing segment in Canada who are getting older. They're worried about what the future will look like, how they will age in place. But there's a solution for Diane, and this solution is something that we have been working on for the last several years. In fact, Diane is also my mother, so I got to experience firsthand how her life has been transformed through this concept of home sharing. Next slide, please. What Diane found through sharing her home with people of many different generations is a connection. Diane became a home sharing host. This means that she rented her bedrooms out to people of different ages for various stays, each one forming a unique special connection with her. The extra income allowed her to afford some extra luxuries in life, allowed her to replace her furnace, and allowed her to enjoy life a little bit more. But more importantly, the companionship that she found filled a very important part of her heart, something that was a little bit empty with her husband passing away and her children moving away from her hometown. Next slide, please. Diane represents part of a very fast-growing opportunity. I realize we have the wrong slide up here, but across Canada, there's over 13 million empty bedrooms, or about 1/3 of all housing supply in Canada sits empty each night. This is a tremendous amount of hidden housing supply. So at HappyPad, our mission is to make use of this hidden housing supply, this 13 million empty bedrooms, by using it as a housing solution to help house other seniors, to house students, to house newcomers, and even refugees. Next slide, please. What HappyPad does is we help connect hosts, people that have spare rooms in their house, with people who are renters, which are people that are looking for an affordable and inclusive place to stay. These could be students, these could be newcomers, these could be young workforce. These are people that want a long-term stay. This is not an Airbnb solution, but they also want something that's meaningful. Next slide, please. So who are typical hosts to home share? Well, a lot of them are just regular everyday people. We see lots of single mothers, we see lots of seniors, and we see families and working professionals, such as Paulette, Alpha, and Colin, who've all been star hosts housing different people with HappyPad. Next slide, please. And to make all of this work at HappyPad, our role is to provide a tool for communities to make home sharing possible. And this is with the HappyPad web application. Next slide, please. What this does is makes it safe and easy for anyone to open up their homes for home sharing by finding compatible housing companions, conducting background checks, signing rental contracts, getting automatic rent payments, and if conflicts happen, connecting with the support team and mediators to help resolve those conflicts. Next slide, please. And this works two ways. Homeowners can find compatible housing companions, and renters can search for housing based on their needs and preferences. Next slide, please. So where does HappyPad fit into the equation? We're not a short-term rental platform, but we're not a permanent housing solution. We really feel this missing middle. People that are moving around Canada, people that want to find someone to share their homes with, but they're not sure if it'll be a long-term max. So this is where HappyPad comes in. We're filling a very important need within our communities. Next slide, please. So, Council, I want to leave it with you. HappyPad is here. We've been helping communities all across Canada, from Vancouver through to Nova Scotia, including working with the province of Nova Scotia. We have a wonderful solution, and we'd love to chat with you to see how we can bring this type of solution to your community to help older adults age in place, but also help solve this housing crisis for younger adults in workforce.
Thank you very much. I much appreciate the report. I can tell you that I have written to the Minister responsible for Housing in British Columbia because I think this is a very important and interesting concept. And I suspect one of the reasons that some people aren't prepared to undertake this kind of arrangement is because the legal potential of problems is just that. It's quite problematic. And what I've suggested to the minister is that they consider, which will cost nobody anything, a legislative change that would allow people to agree by consent for a specific arrangement between named parties only and only for the duration of the agreement, that they would enjoy the jurisdiction and benefits and responsibilities of the Residential Tenancy Act, which right now excludes this kind of arrangement, so that you don't have any recourse to what is a fairly simple and inexpensive legal procedure. So I want to sincerely thank you on behalf of Council for this tonight. We have a couple of questions for you, if that's all right. No, you don't, sir. Councillor Armstrong, please.
Thank you. You actually hit on what I was going to say, because I have talked to some seniors that would be interested, but they are worried about what if it doesn't work, what are their options. Do you help with that?
Yes, we do. We do. We are quite experienced working with situations that don't work out. This ultimately starts with a proactive support system. So residential tenancy is a reactive system. Typically, once a major problem happens, you file for an arbitration, you go through a process. And in most situations, it's a lose-lose situation. In home sharing, we can't afford to have these conflicts in the house. So we start with regular check-ins and we monitor situations to look for breakdowns. And we like to catch this and help provide coaching and mediation to help resolve these conflicts. If situations happen where the parties aren't happy, we will work through the situation with professional mediators. And if that doesn't work, we will work with the parties to end that living arrangement and find alternative solutions. Home sharing needs to be treated a little bit differently from a standard rental. In Nova Scotia, for example, where we work with the provincial government there, home sharing is covered under the Tenancies Act there. However, we are operating programs in other parts of Canada which are not covered under the Tenancies Act. So the situations are quite unique, but in short, the conflicts are often unique to each household.
And just to follow up, great that you're doing that. Do you do like a screening process before to make sure that the two individuals or maybe three are compatible with each other?
Yes, we have two types of processes. One is a background check. It's an international background check where we check over 200,000 databases from 240 countries. And this just basically is a clearance check to know who these people are. And the second part is the compatibility profiles. So when people sign up, they fill out a questionnaire, matching questionnaire that allows them to know what's important for them, such as dietary habits, allergies, if they like to socialize lots, or if they're very introverted and like a lot of their own time. We have a series of questions like this that help us determine who would be compatible to share homes with. There's many criteria involved in this, and we often find that some people think they have an idea of what an ideal match would be, but when presented with other options, they often find they learn something about themselves, so to say.
That's great. Thank you. And I wish you great success. It is a good program.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Himmins.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to Mr. Libby for being here. I agree with Councillor Armstrong. I think this program is amazing. Just on a personal note, I have a father who's a widower with a lot of bedrooms, or not a lot, but excessive, more than he needs. And I just think there's such potential here to remediate the housing crisis by matching people with excess resources and those that don't have any. And I think that exists, and that's a great thing to do. My question for you, are you working with any other Vancouver Island communities? Are you specifically based in Nova Scotia? Have you branched out of that province at all?
Yes, so I'm based out of Kelowna, British Columbia, and we do have operations in many regions of Canada. Our largest program is with the province of Nova Scotia. However, we are working with one organization on Vancouver already. That's SOS Community Services Society. And we do also have work or be in collaborations with some other stakeholders. However, our overall presence on Vancouver Island is quite limited at this time.
Okay, thank you. How do you make money?
We have two channels for this. Most of our program operating revenue comes from called our program service fees. So typically we sell annual program packages to stakeholders. So this could be provincial government, it could be municipal government, or NGO stakeholders. So for example, SOS we're working with, they purchased a program partnership with us, which covers the cost of setting up the program in the community. And then in addition to that, for hosts who use the program, we have a nominal monthly service fee, which covers some of the ongoing ongoing costs to operate the program. These programs in a community by community basis are operated in a not-for-profit model.
Thank you. Last question, if I may. You've been doing this for 7 years. Do you have data on your success rates? Like how many matches are successful?
Yes, we do.
Is that something you can share?
Yes, certainly. If I would be happy to share more information with you after this meeting.
Thank you. Very much appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for the presentation tonight. Very much appreciated, and the contribution from Mr. Bellsmith at Nanaimo Churches. On to reports. The first is Downtown and Hotel Motel Revitalization Tax Exemption Programs. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So staff have undertaken a comprehensive review of these two revitalization tax exemption programs, and information was gathered at a GPC meeting in November, as well as from other municipalities and the developer community. So Ms. Manhas is here tonight to give you an overview of the work that was done and the resulting bylaws that are here for your consideration tonight.
Ms. Manhas, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mercer, and good evening, Your Worship and Council. The purpose of this presentation is to seek approval for the first 3 readings of the Revitalization Tax Exemption Bylaw 7384 and Bylaw 7385. Incentives are used by municipalities to encourage investment in underperforming areas of the city or sectors of the economy. Incentives help attract investment, promote economic activity, and enhance the overall livability as well as attractiveness of specific areas. Section 226 of the Community Charter provides authority to local governments to exempt property from municipal portion of the property taxes, and they can be used for environmental, economic, or social development purposes. Nanaimo has 2 tax incentive programs that are aimed at revitalization. One of them is for the hotel and motel sector, and the other one is for the downtown core area. The hotel and motel tax exemption program was introduced first in 2011, and it was to encourage development and renovation of hotels and motels to improve the overall inventory as well as the quality of accommodation that was provided in the city of Nanaimo. And the minimum building permit value for this was set at $2 million. And in terms of results, there have been 2 projects that are built in the downtown core. One of them is, of course, right across from us here, VICC. It's the Marriott Courtyard. And the other one is the Quality Inn on Selby Street. And this program basically allows a 10-year tax exemption that applies to the municipal portion of property taxes, and it's based on the increase in assessed value resulting from the capital improvement that's made during the investment. And the downtown tax exemption program was introduced in 2018. And the purpose of that was to encourage development of new multifamily residential buildings, new commercial buildings, as well as additions and renovations to existing commercial buildings. The building permit value to qualify was set at $500,000, and for multifamily dwellings, it had to be 4 or more units. In terms of results for that program, we have 10 projects that are taking advantage of that program. And most significant of these is the TELUS Living project, which is on 235 Wallace Street, and the former Caledonia Clinic property, which is on 340 Campbell Street, and both of these projects are under construction. And again, this program also provides a 10-year tax exemption that applies to the municipal portion of property taxes, and it's based on the assessed value that results from the increased capital improvement. And when we established the Downtown Revitalization Program in 2018, it included a commitment to review the program after 5 years. Staff undertook a comprehensive review of the program, including looking at what was being done across other British Columbia municipalities, and we also gathered feedback from the development community on the uptake of the program in our own community. And at the November 27th GPC meeting in 2023, staff shared these findings with council and engaged the GPC on amendments to the two programs, which focused on some of the key considerations in each of the programs. And in terms of the input provided, you see that on the slide up there, so I can summarize that for you. For investment under the Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program, building permit value must be $2 million. Previously, that was $500,000. For multifamily development, it's 10 units or more. Previously, that was 4 units. For the hotel and motel program, the minimum building permit value is set at $3 million for new builds and $250,000 for renovations. And previously, the threshold was $2 million for both of those. And as per program duration and the percentage of tax break, GPC chose 5 years and for the tax break period and 100% of municipal portion of property taxes. The program timeline is approximately 5 years. The program will expire on December 31st, 2029. And the start of this timeline is going to be a little bit sooner than January 1st, 2025. Essentially, once we repeal the old bylaws and adopt the new ones, that's when this program will come into effect. And this was really the most efficient way for us to deal with the change. In terms of agreement approval authority, senior staff level have the authority to enter into these agreements, and it would be the GM of corporate services that looks after that. And in terms of extension requests, we had approved 2 maximum and none after December 31st, 2029, which is when the program would expire. After the GPC meeting, staff summarized the amendments and met with the development community to get input on the proposed amendments. They supported all of the changes with the exception of the length of exemption period. They would like to keep that at 10 years instead of 5. Staff also believe that the hotel and motel program should be made available citywide for new builds as well as renovations. And the rationale for that is the downtown area boasts quite a few quality accommodation properties now, and a developer may find other less saturated areas of the city to be more viable for hotel-motel development. Our city solicitor has updated the existing bylaws reflecting changes that were recommended by the committee, by staff, as well as the development community. That's what you see in your package today, and this would be option number 1. And as the authority to approve the agreements has moved now to staff instead of council, staff will provide an annual update to council on projects that are undertaken under each of these programs. And once the bylaws are adopted, the existing bylaws 7143 and 7261 will be repealed. As well, notice will be given under section 227 of the community charter as required. Previously approved exemption agreements are protected moving forward. And if there are any questions before we vote on the options, happy to entertain those right now.
Thank you very much. We have in order, Councillors Armstrong and then Himmons.
Thank you. At the GPC, we were very much back and forth on the time, and we actually wanted less than 5 years, and we actually came to concession on 5, yet now I see the bylaw is 10. So just for further, I will not be supporting because of the move to the 10 years. We were very clear on that at the GPC, and these developers are making a lot of money, and many of them are, and the fact that they want to be exempt for 10 years does not sit well with me, so I will not be supporting the change. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Himmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually had a similar reaction to Councillor Armstrong, and I'm hearing rumbling, so maybe we could just have Ms. Manhas clarify, is it 5 years or 10 years that we're looking at?
So for option 1, that's one of the options, that would be 10 years. Option 2 would be 5 years. And for that, we would come back to you at the next GPC meeting, which is on June the 17th. So it would be quickly that we come back with that change. And option 3 is providing alternate direction. So option 1 is 10, option 2 is 5.
Thank you. And given that, reviewing the materials for how we voted at the GPC, we were 100% behind 5 years. So could I just understand why staff are recommending 10?
I think it's because development community had mentioned that they would prefer 10 years as opposed to 5.
This team very clearly said 5. So I won't support option 1, but I do have a question regarding the extensions. So if say we take staff recommendation, we give a 10-year tax exemption, and then we are allowing potentially 2 extensions on top of that. How long are the extensions? Are they year-long extensions? Are they another 10-year of extensions? And further, if the materials indicate that the program will be wrapping or reevaluated in 2029, I don't know, and everything's going to, shut down effectively then until we, maybe re-implement. I'm not sure the extension piece has merit.
So there's 2 different things that I think are getting mixed up here, and one of them is basically how long the program runs for. That would be 5 years. So anybody who wants to apply for this program has 5 years. So if they want to do a project, basically the end of 2029 is how long they have to apply for this program. Beginning of 2030, we could, basically that's when the program expires. We don't need to continue this program after that. The tax exemption, what we would call is the benefit, that is for a 10-year period. So if they enter into it in 2028, they still get that. As soon as they get their occupancy for that particular project, that is when the 10 years start. So that will still continue on for the 10 years. And the maximum benefit they ever get is 10 years or 5 years, whichever you choose. I think the confusion is just that the benefit period is for 10 years, whenever they become qualified. And the program itself is only going to run for 5 years, meaning after the program expires, we will not be taking any applications under either of those programs unless council decides they want to move forward with that. Or they might look at something different, but basically that's how long the program would run for.
And I'm sorry, this isn't clear to me. What is the extension for?
Oh, so the extensions are basically, we've had some developers come in the past. They need to meet 2 different conditions, along with all the other city zoning and everything, but the 2 dates, basically, one is around building permit. So they need to we originally established, okay, you need to get your building permit, let's say within 6 months, and that's a date that's in their agreement. And then the other date that's in their agreement is that they have to get their occupancy. And so in the past, we've had some developers come before council many times, as much as 4 or 5 times. So we wanted to make sure that we really look at that, and we want them to really meet those deadlines in order to qualify for the program. So we really maximized it at 2 extensions. So ultimately, that could be like 1 extension if they couldn't make the building permit and they have to have good rationale for why. And then the other one could potentially be for occupancy, and it could be both at the beginning and not at the end. But really, that's the maximum extensions they would get. And again, that would be up to, because it's going to staff now. They would have to have good rationale for why they need that extension, and staff would look at it at that point.
Thank you. Just my comment for those that we've extended 3-4 times. I'm never sure of the rationale, so it's good to hear that staff evaluate that. But I don't think we should be giving 4 extensions. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. I too am in favor of just doing a 5-year exemption. one of the questions I had is just about the renovation. So I think the 2 million we had before was too high of a threshold, what we heard from the hotel operators. And was that the 250,000? Was that something that the operators had requested or suggested?
Yes, that's correct. They had said because of the size of some of the properties in the city of Nanaimo that they weren't worth very much, so 2 million in renovations was a little bit too high for them to maybe be able to touch that. So they figured $250,000 was probably a better incentive to maybe, get into renovating some of those properties.
And then with the renovation and the taxation, is the amount of the renovation, the cost of the renovation, what is deducted from the value of the property, or is the property reassessed at whatever value and that amount is then deducted? How does that exactly work?
So essentially, the developer ends up paying. So, for instance, let's say their project, that's land and improvements, is worth $2 million. Today, they make an improvement of $250,000. Over the next number of years, it's going to be worth, $2.25 million, basically. They'd still pay taxes on the $2 million. They wouldn't pay taxes on the $250,000 for the time period that council chooses, whether it's 5 years or 10 years.
And what happens in a couple of years when the property is reassessed at a higher value? Is it still the amount of the $250,000?
No, it's not. It can go up, and it'll be basically they don't pay it on the base that's established at the beginning, but they do get the exemption on the difference.
Okay, so it
Yeah.
stays at the same base
So
for the period of the exemption.
Yes, the base is the same, so they could potentially get higher benefit if the property value goes up.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Been excited to see this come forward. So I just have a couple questions. The first is, so just setting aside the hotel, all these are just focused on the residential. It says 10 projects were under this program. Objectively, how do we know how many were not going to be viable or not out of those 10? So did it actually provide an incentive? And the second sort of or a related question to that is, how do we determine success other than just 10 happened? Was 10 a high number? Is 10 a low number? So what objective standard do we kind of look at to say, oh, this program's been a success?
So in terms of the qualifications, that's like for them to become qualified, they have to have a building that has minimum 10 units. So if they're building anything less, they don't qualify for this program.
Sorry, just clarity on, not how do you qualify for the program? How are we qualifying what success in the program is here based on just, like, because it kind of just says 10 units or 10 projects happened. But how do we know that is 10 a good amount?
Is a good number, yeah.
Successful, or is it underperforming?
Yeah, so you're saying what does success look like? Basically, we've had 10 projects that have taken part in this program, and we can count the number of units, so it totally depends on council. So programs, incentive programs, they are generally here's some criteria in terms of when they're a good instrument. So they need to meet a few criteria. One of them is that it's something that the community or council has recognized as a priority in the community. So I would say the downtown core is recognized in the city plan as a primary urban center. This is where they want to see the highest level of density in the city of Nanaimo. So this will help achieve that, and it will help achieve it arguably faster than otherwise. But incentives are supposed to be used for projects that are community priority and that they're not happening on their own organically. So you're using this to either make them happen, or you're using these incentives to make them happen faster because they're not happening fast enough. Another criteria would be to make sure that they're offered for a limited time period, because you want to make sure that people are taking advantage of it, that there's a sense of urgency, because you don't want to keep them going on forever. And they're really meant to create a level playing field is what they're meant for. They're not meant to give unfair advantage to someone over someone else. So that's why they're generally used in areas where that needs some reinvigoration, for instance. And you ask a good question, when do you determine that it's reinvigorated enough? That's completely up to council. We haven't come up with a number to say this is, once we reach this many units in this downtown core, that, but I would say, just looking at the numbers, we haven't had a lot of projects take advantage of this, and especially if you're thinking about going for a 5-year benefit period, it's good. You can look at the program 5 years from now and see how it's doing and discontinue the program, but that's why we have a deadline on it. So yeah, based on the uptake, I would say we still have room to encourage more density in the downtown core. And, it's likely that more projects are going to get built under this incentive program than not, and therefore you have a tax revenue coming on stream 5 years after they're built, as opposed to you may not have as many projects built. So there's pros and cons to both.
Okay, thanks. I think I'll move on to my next question, but really what I'm hearing is we simply don't know if the project has been effective or not in the past. So my next question is based on, other than interviews with the development community, is there any objective framework that we looked at to sort of derive these numbers or these thresholds for construction costs? Or is it just, hey, this is what you told us, we translated that into...
We looked at best practices in other communities, and of course things change over time. For example, how much, a project costs, construction costs were much lower 5-10 years ago compared to where they are now. So we've sort of, everything that was proposed to the GPC was based on a lot of research and evidence from what's happening on the ground. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Ms. Manas, that I was coming here tonight with it in mind to go for option 2, but you had said that that staff recommended option number 1 because of the development community, and that has me concerned that maybe we need to do more discussion on this before we simply put an option forward. And I'm just wondering, Your Worship, if we shouldn't be pushing this back to the GPC meeting to discuss it further. Just a thought. Otherwise, I'd just simply put option number 2 on the table. There you go. There you go. Yeah. So it was your comment, which was I really appreciate, because if the development community is coming clearly at us saying, no, this is not going to work, then we need to maybe discuss it further. And that's all my point is that I want to be as open as possible and make sure that we're doing this the right way. But I clearly said, as Councillor Armstrong said, 5 years that's what we heard. So I was surprised to see option number 1 by staff as the recommendation for 10.
So Councillor Perino's moved it. Councillor Eastmere seconded it. Any further comment from the mover or the seconder? If not, I'll go on to Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'll support this, and I think to Councillor Perino's suggestion, this was the subject of a really fulsome, as I recall, discussion at the GPC committee, and I think the result was basically a compromise, if you will, with a surprising amount of consensus on council that we felt 5 years was more appropriate. So while I would be willing to support 10, I'm okay with the compromise. I want to thank Ms. Manhas for her good work. I really support these programs. I think, to me, they are about sending a message. And the message is that we, as council, are supportive of development and revitalization. And this is a gesture on our part to encourage that to happen. So I'm happy to support the option of option 2.
Or you're not supporting the motion that Councillor Perino's made to refer it back to GPC?
No, I didn't.
No.
No, you.
Sorry.
I actually.
Yeah, sorry, I understood you'd made
She made the motion. She moved option 2.
option 2. Sorry.
And that's what I'm supporting.
All right, that sounds just fine. I'm the one who's wrong on this one. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, I'm not going to support this. I don't think that it's clear whether the tax incentive program actually is incentivizing anything. There's not really anything to say whether those 10 projects would have gone ahead regardless of what we do. And I think fundamentally, I'm not in support of subsidizing private development through this program with taxpayer money. And, you know, at the GPC, it did look like we were, you know, the majority of people were in favor of supporting the tax subsidy. However, in that discussion, you know, knowing that looked like it was going forward, there was a decision to maintain the current boundary at Pine Street, and I think it's just way too wide of a net. And we should, you know, if there is consensus to go forward with this, we should be making it much more concentrated around the downtown, lowering it to Prudhoe, if, you know, to see if it does, but regardless, I'm not in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll support option 2, but in response to the concerns that have been raised by both Councillors Gesselbrock and Brown, arguably you'll never get a fulsome answer, nor can the answer ever be given. Does an incentive program work? Are more Canadians buying electric vehicles because they get a subsidy when they buy it than would have bought without the subsidy? I don't know. Unless you get some sworn declaration that has legal consequences from everybody who participates, a developer who says, I built this hotel because of the tax exemption, it was the deciding factor for me, I think it's very challenging. So I think we're always going to face that issue, and I don't think you'll ever get a fulsome answer. But having said that, I think council was reasonably clear. But, you know, if we hear back from the development community and they say, you know, forget it, we're going to build outside of the downtown core, and the reason is, you know, if we're going to pay taxes, we want to do it because it makes more sense for us to build in the outside of the downtown core, then we need to pay attention to that. And we're going to be relying on Ms. Manhas, as the city has for many years, to be the both voice to and the development community and the ear of. And so we may want to come back and consider this again at some time in the future. Councillor Brown, is there anything else you wish to say?
Yeah, I'm actually not in support of option 2 because I would be prepared to move the 3 hotel tax exemption bylaws tonight. Like there are 2 separate streams here in my mind that all the discussion has been on the residential, but I see, you know, unless someone has any objection, I see no reason we couldn't proceed with those 3.
Your Worship.
Ms. Gurry, please.
So the issue with the bylaw, the first one on Report 12A, is because the bylaw has it written for 10 years. So in order to give readings to a bylaw, the bylaw has to be attached, and unfortunately the bylaw attached has 10 years and not 5. So that's why you couldn't move this first one.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm fully comfortable hotels at 10 years. It's like, you know,
Okay.
like,
So in that case, then you would, if option 2 is defeated, then you could move option 1 and then give readings to the bylaws.
okay, this is very confusing because these are actually 2 very separate things with respect to, and also Well, they're two bylaws, but.
Yeah, so your worship, just on that, I believe option 2 that we're speaking of right now is for the first bylaw. Is that not correct, Ms. Manhas, or is it for both bylaws? So we do have 2 bylaws. We have the revitalization tax exemption bylaw downtown, and we have the revitalization tax exemption bylaw hotel and motel for
So-
that's all of Nanaimo. So is there 2 bylaws not attached?
Both the bylaws are applied to each of the options. So if you choose option 1, for instance, it's applicable to both the bylaws, the way they're written right now. If you choose option 2, that's applicable to both the bylaws.
So what I believe Councillor Brown is saying, Ms. Manhas, and I think just procedurally, yes, Councillor Brown, you could do what you wished. You could, seriatim vote on option 2, applying to the first bylaw, and then you could give readings to the second bylaw should you wish to do the 10 years for all of Nanaimo. But right now, both bylaws as written are for 10 years, not 5. Does that make more sense?
You know, if I don't know council's comfort level with the hotel because no one really spoke to it, so.
So, Ms. Gurry, go ahead.
So the motion on the floor right now, your worship,
So
option 2 would be to come back with 2 different bylaws that both state 5 years. That's what's on the floor right now.
All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillors Gesselbrock and Brown, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Manhas, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The next is electric vehicle supply cost recovery bylaw revision. Mr. Sims, please.
Thanks, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. Just as you can see in the report, the proposed changes to fees and charges bylaws is before you tonight, just regarding our recently adopted electric vehicle charger fees and charges. I've asked Ms. McCaskill to sit in and just give you a brief overview of the rationale. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is a recommendation for a revision to the fees and charges bylaw brought forward back in, adopted back in March to adopt a fee for service model for our electric vehicle supply equipment. People are using them, they're well loved. Unfortunately, some people are staying a little longer than we'd like, and it's not allowing the turnover that we would hope to see, allowing more people to make use of our assets. The original bylaw was proposed to have 3 different rate structures, one of which was for the first 2 hours you have a fee. The third and subsequent hours you have a premium rate attached. If you need a little more charging, no problem, just stay a little longer, you'll be charged a little bit more. In addition to that rate structure, we had layered on a premium fee for charging overnight. We have maintenance tasks that we need to do at our facilities, and having cars parked overnight was causing some challenges, so we were encouraging people to move along. The third premium rate associated was those folks that plugged in their car, got it filled up, and then left their car because it was essentially free parking for them. So we had added a third premium fee to say, you've got what you need, please move along, make use of the space for other folks. Unfortunately, when we worked with our service provider to layer these 3 rules on top of each other, they made us aware that you cannot have all 3 at the same time, that you can only have 1. So unfortunately, I'm here tonight to revise the bylaw previously brought forward and recommend the first option, the original recovery for time spent at the charger, first 2 hours at the same $1.50 an hour, but then revising the premium rate associated up from the previously recommended 6 cents to 7 cents a minute, which works out to $4.20 an hour. So really encouraging folks. 2 hours is generally enough to get about 80% charge on a newer model. We did get some feedback from public following our engagement or our meeting with council, and folks were noting that various cars charge at different rates. And really these are intended to be an extra benefit when you attend one of our facilities. Here's a top up move along. It's not really intended to be their sole source of charging. When we see the comments coming back on our service, the service dashboard, a lot of people are commenting that people are staying for a very long time. So there does seem to be a desire amongst folks that are using our chargers to see a greater turnover, allowing them to make use of the chargers. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baskell, for the presentation. Councillor Manley?
Thank you, Your Worship. And a quick question. I apologize for not emailing this in advance because I heard from somebody that a few of these chargers, the chargers are 6 kilowatt chargers, but a few of them have dual chargers on them so that when there's 2 cars parked at it and charging, they're actually getting 3 kilowatts instead of 6. And was there any consideration in that in the bylaw because that would take longer to charge a vehicle and would be a higher rate of electrical charge for it? So I'm just wondering if there was any consideration for that, for those 3 units. I think it was Maffeo, City Hall, and Merle Logan.
Through your worship to Councillor Manny, yes, all of our public-facing chargers that are networked are dual-head chargers. So the situation that you described does exist at all 6 of our public-facing networked chargers. We do have 2 non-networked chargers that this does not apply to, but it was considered in the original rate structure, and it's a balance between what we can reasonably recover for the cost of the overall asset. There has been some changes. It's a quickly changing market. Measurements Canada does not recognize electric vehicle supply equipment as appropriate measuring devices for electrical distribution. And so because we're not an electric utility, we would have to go through a separate process that seems quite long and arduous. If it was the direction of council, we could absolutely look into it. But looking at all of this, and then looking at what neighboring municipalities were, it follows a little more like a parking fee. You know, you pay for your parking by time usually, yep. And then the extra bonus becomes the charger. But we are aware that there is load sharing if there's 2 cars parked next to each other.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and it is a parking fee rather than an electrical charging fee.
A little bit, yeah.
We are not a utility. Okay. All right, well, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions. Appreciated. Councillor Gusselbrock, please.
I'd like to move that fees and charges amendment bylaw 2024 number 7336.09, a bylaw to charge electric vehicle charging connection fees, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that the bylaw pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
A motion that the bylaw pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We are on to item C, development permit application number DP 1189-200 10th Street. Mr. Holm, good evening, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship. This is a property, as you said, on 10th Street, a development permit. This is within the Harewood neighborhood. The property is adjacent to a city-owned park at 250 10th Street. You can see it outlined in red on the screen. This is a panhandle lot. You can see the panhandle portion connecting to 10th Street. The lot was created in 2011. It's existing I-2 light industrial zone property. What's proposed is an industrial building and storage yard, as well as a caretaker's unit. And if you could please bring up attachment C, the site plan, and then moving through to attachment D, the building elevations, that would be appreciated. So what's proposed here, as I mentioned, is an industrial building and storage yard with a caretaker's unit as well as a couple of variances requested, a watercourse setback variance for the driveway access and gravel pathway within the panhandle portion of the property to provide access from 10th Street, and as well as a fence height and retaining wall, combined fence height and retaining wall variance. The watercourse is the poorly defined channel to Wexford Creek. There's extensive restoration proposed as part of the development proposal. Report from a qualified environmental professional attached to the report, and confirms that the restoration and post-development condition would result in an increase in quality and quantity of functional riparian habitat over the existing condition once development is complete. So happy to take any questions. The recommendation is to approve the development permit. Obviously, it's been before design panel, and recommendations from design panel incorporated as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. I'm not seeing any questions from anyone. Councillor Armstrong, move the recommendation. Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Gesselbrock? No? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. And the next is development permit application number DP 1324-3180 Island Highway North. Mr. Holm, again, please.
Thank you again, Your Worship. This is a property that was previously before council for a development permit approved in the past. What's proposed here is similarly a car wash. In this case, the previous proposal had a residential component as well. They've dropped the residential component here. Property on the corner of Norwell Drive and the Island Highway, and you'll see it outlined in red on the screen. An existing CC3 zoned property. It's in the secondary urban center at Country Club, and you can see the site plan there and the building elevations. What's proposed, requested variances to canopy projection into a flanking side yard from the allowable 1 meter projection to 2.85 meters, as well as a landscape buffer variance. Happy to take any questions on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prino.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll put the motion on the floor, and then if I could just comment to it, please, if I get a seconder.
Seconder, Councillor Armstrong.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for bringing this forward. I'm so pleased. It's just a barren piece of cement, and just so nice to see that a business is going in there, and it'll certainly liven up that corner quite a bit. So good news, very good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. And just from the design panel's perspective, there was a lot of support for this project, and I'm glad to see that they have, based on the recommendations from the design panel, added 6 additional trees within the landscaping to screen headlights from view on adjacent roads. So good to see that. Thank you.
Very good. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Next item is E, consent re RDN sewage boring bylaws number 1905, 1906, and 1907. Mr. Sims, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. As you can see, the report before you is for the loan authorization to provide support to the Regional District of Nanaimo for 3 particular projects. And essentially, Council is being asked to consent on behalf of the electors so that the regional district can proceed to long-term borrowing. So these are 3 critical projects that are part of the system that nobody wants to talk about, the sewage treatment facility and pump stations, without which the city would not function. No sewer, no town. So these are great projects. I think all asset management projects that are critical to protecting the environment, to continued growth and continued functioning of our sewage system. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions. Anyone care to move the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. We're on to bylaws next. Item 13, political signage regulation amendment bylaw 2024, number 7335.01. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Move that political signage regulation amendment bylaw 2024, number 7335.01, to amend the provision associated with political signage and provincial highway right-of-way be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is municipal highway renaming bracket, Powder Works Road, bracket, bylaw 2024, number 7378. Councillor Gesselbach.
Move that municipal highway renaming Powder Works Road, bylaw 2024, number 7378, to provide for the renaming of municipal highways be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. The next is item C, municipal highway naming Boxwood Road, bylaw 2024, number 7379.
I'd like to move that municipal highway naming Boxwood Road, bylaw 2024, number 7379, to provide for the naming of municipal highways be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. We have no notices of motion. We have no other business. Councillor Emmons. Sorry.
No need to apologize. Regarding the delegation, Happy Pad, I would just request that staff follow up with them to explore options for City of Nanaimo's participation.
Not in the way of a formal motion, but if staff.
Should we have a formal motion? I'd be happy to make one.
Your Worship, if it's matters arising out of the delegation, it's okay. The motion was to have staff follow up with Happy Pad for, pardon me, Councillor Hammond, sorry.
No, that's okay. To have staff follow up with Happy Pad to investigate implementation in the city.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Brown. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. And question period. Mr. Annesley, item 12A, which is the Downtown Hotel and Motel Revitalization Tax Exemption Program.
Yes, I'd also like to add, a question about 12E as well. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to.
It's fine.
First of all, a clarification. I couldn't remember what Ms. Manhas said. Was the hotel one 2018 and the private one 2011 when it was implemented, or what was? Sorry, I've forgotten.
Sorry,
through your worship, the hotel and motel tax exemption was created in 2011, and the downtown revitalization tax exemption was in 2018.
Okay, and she said only the two motels, so those are both recent, right? So since 2011, we've only had the two, which are both relatively recent.
That is my understanding.
Yes.
Okay.
Two hotels.
But she did also mention that they had 10, I think she said 10 plus, but then afterwards she said 10 developments. And I'm just wondering, is there a ballpark of the tax revenue that was lost from those developments?
Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there is no tax dollars that are lost. So what happens is the city determines how much money it needs to collect from taxes from each property class, and then the amount that we need is spread over one less property in that class. So we still collect, there's no revenue lost, it's just the amount needed is spread over less properties.
Okay, so, no, sorry, I know, I understand that. What I meant is, like, say the Coast Bastion is paying its property taxes. So what I'm saying is, what revenue have we, not that we lost, but what revenue haven't we gained from that period?
Yeah.
Again.
In other words, what would be the revenue you would have received from the Marriott this year if they in fact had been taxed?
Well, we would still collect the same amount of money. It just would be that everybody else would pay less, in a sense. Yeah. Yes, it does, because you have, say if we need $10 million from a particular class of property, we take that and we spread that over the entire assessment base. So your mill rate becomes, the more assessed value, the less your mill rate is. Yeah.
I think I understand what Mr. Annesley's getting at. If you had, let's simplify it with 5 properties, and you need to raise $10,000 and they're $2,000 each. Now you've got 4 properties. In theory, it's $2,500 each. You're foregoing the revenue potentially. The tax bill is $2,500 higher for 4 properties, and I'm simplifying, but that's really what you're.
Yeah, and well, and just in general, since I understand why we've given the Marriott because the conference center, I understand the issue, but I'm just wondering, you know, if the Coast Bastion's paying X amount and the Marriott isn't. I looked at hotel rates and they're very competitive even with, say, like the Long Lake Inn or, so I'm just, you know, trying to understand that. But more to the point is actually the private properties that are not paying the tax. I'm just wondering, I understand what you're saying, the city hasn't lost that revenue, but it's made up from the other tax base, right? So that's why I'm trying to figure out what, as a tax base, as a taxpayer, we have lost or not gained, right? That's.
And through your worship, I don't have that answer on
Okay.
me right now, but that is something that we could follow up with.
Okay. And also, sorry, maybe I missed it for the 12E, but was there a cost structure in terms of the borrowing? How much cost? I'm not even saying that we don't need it. I'm just asking what the cost structure would be in terms of the 3 items that need to be.
The cost structure on?
Or, yeah, I mean, sorry, we're authorizing a loan, right, to buy these 3 items. Am I getting that wrong?
Oh, pardon me, on.
What would be the cost of the loan, or just what is the cost of the loan being taken out?
Those were as part of they're the regional district, part of their, sorry, Your Worship, it should be coming through you. Within the regional district, I can quickly find the costs. It's attached to the report in the appendices. So the basement motor control project is $2 million, which requires $1.1 million in borrowing. Wellington Pump Station upgrade is $8.9 million, but it requires $5.85 million in borrowing. And the grit tank relining project is $8.3 million, but requires $6.3 million in long-term borrowing.
Okay, and that's just going on the our general borrowing in terms of the city, like partnering with the RDN in terms of that borrowing. So that's roughly, I made my calculations, roughly about $8 or $9 million then in terms of borrowing for these 3.
Your Worship, it's the regional district that will be borrowing the money, and the city participates in the regional district sewer service as a participant, as a contributor to the regional district sewer funding. So therefore, we're consenting on behalf of Nanaimo to the regional district borrowing the money, so that it's not impacting the city's borrowing headroom, as it were, but the regional districts.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn. Moved Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Prino. All those in favor? Any opposed?